that I don't see faces for. Hi, Greg.
All right. Hello, everyone. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so happy to see all your beautiful faces again for our virtual lunch and learn. So we are actually going to get started. So today, the first 45 minutes will be a tactical workshop, and it will be led by the lovely Lauren Busch, who happens to be a current 2020 fellow. She currently is the VP of Global Media at Blackrock, and she is going to take you through a session on procrastination. Okay, so without further ado, I hand it over to you, Lauren.
Thank you. And it's so exciting to see all of you guys. I can't believe there are so many of you. And I'm like massively large on your screen, so I apologize for that in advance. All right, so I am going to share a PowerPoint, maybe, as long as it's, why don't I see PowerPoint? Oh, here it is. It's like I have a lot of things on my screen that say P is for productivity. All right, can everybody see my screen? Okay, thumbs up. So as you guys have already mentioned, thank you for the intro. I'm Lauren Busch. I work as the Vice President of Global Media at Blackrock. So I'm here today to talk to you guys about productivity. I'll start with a couple of examples. I actually missed my joke before I was going to open up the slides. I was going to say, here's a great example. I didn't build any slides, but I got ahead of myself. So I missed my opportunity for the crowning joke of my presentation. But I do have slides. I only prepped them at midnight last night because I am not the perfect non-procrastinator. But I will talk to you guys about how over the course of my time in the workplace, I learned to plan ahead. I learned how to be a more productive, efficient team member. And also I'll just talk a little bit about how to be a good team member as you enter the workplace, and how to kind of like set yourself off on the right foot and contribute to a team in a positive way. So let's see, I'll get into it with slide 2. A little bit about me. I am kind of funny. I'm definitely casual and very no holds barred. Stop me at any time with questions. Either just speak up, unmute yourself, or just type into the chat box, and I'll try to look at it at the same time as I go. Or Maya, you can let me know if there are any chats that I need to address. I'll also ask you guys questions at certain times throughout this presentation, so you don't have to listen to me talk for 45 minutes. So definitely don't be scared to speak up, and then we'll leave a few minutes for Q&A at the end if you'd prefer to wait till the end. Here's a quick timeline of my life. Starting on the left-hand side as timelines go, I grew up super duper competitive and very type A. Good grades, I was a horseback rider, I juggled a lot, but being busy made me really responsible. I would go riding before school, then I would go to high school, then I would go ride and take care of the horses after school, then I would do my homework. So you really didn't have much time to get things wrong or procrastinate. Otherwise you would be up all night long. I'm not sure if you can see in this photo, but my horse was half white, which meant he was literally always dirty. So I learned to clean up messes, that appearances mattered at a very young age, and how to be a team player and help others, around the barn too. I always wanted to be better than everybody else, smarter, better handwriting, cleaner horse, better horseback rider, you name it. Then I got to Duke, and suddenly I wasn't even close to the best anymore. And my schedule was way less busy, and I really didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to time manage. I didn't understand why my classes didn't start at 8:30 and end at 3. I had class in the middle of the day, sometimes class at night, sometimes in the morning, no consistency. It was a really tough time for me. And looking back, I wish I had figured it out sooner. I graduated. That's my Elle Woods type photo from when you watch Legally Blonde and she goes, "We did it." That's my "we did it" photo. So I graduated, entered the working world, moved to New York City. My first job was at Zenith, as you can kind of see on the bottom there. And every first job is hard because you're thrown into working and you just kind of have to figure it out. There's no like easy peasy answers. There's no roadmap. I think some people get more advice, more coaching than others. The only advice I had was be the first one in, last one out, and offer to take anything and everything off of people's plates, which, as you'll see later on in the presentation, isn't actually the whole story. That just ends up with you being burnt out and exhausted. Although I do recommend it at least for your very first days. Zenith was where I learned to keep a to-do list. You can see the little icon up there for checklist. But I didn't understand, unlike homework, when you're at work, you don't get everything done on your to-do list by the end of the day. You don't just get to check boxes, move things off your plate, and then they're done and dusted. Most of it's not 100% under your control. You're waiting to hear back from somebody else. You're working on a long-term project, whatever it might be. It's just impossible to start fresh every day. And it's impossible to start with your to-do list every day and get through all of it in one day because you get pulled in different directions. You have to be flexible, you name it. But because of who I was my entire, life prior to that, I struggled with leaving those messes behind to deal with the next day. And as I mentioned, I experienced burnout really fast. Transitioning, I left Zenith after 9 months and I went to work at Penske Media, specifically for Women's Wear Daily, Variety, and then Rolling Stone. So that was, I would say, my first real foray into what it felt like to be like a middle level team member in the workplace. I probably for the first time had really good mentorship, really good team members who got the wheels turning, like you see in the little icon on the timeline, and helped me understand how to be, it was a 3-person team. They helped me understand how to be 1/3 of a team, what work was my responsibility, how to manage up, how to manage down and be a good manager to others around me, how to present to senior leadership. I had great coaches. And even though I would say there was not necessarily a formal coaching setup at Penske, I had just some really good managers that I learned from. And people that I still call to ask for advice when I'm having trouble managing a team member of mine to this day. Fast forward, I've been at Blackrock for 4 years now. I left Women's Wear Daily and came to Blackrock in 2017. And my job at Blackrock has changed significantly over the course of 4 years. I would say this is really where I learned to be a strategic partner to my teammates and what it meant to be a strategic partner to my teammates, what it meant to carry a team, how to deal with corporate turnover, how to deal with changing priorities, how to deal with emails from the CEO at midnight saying the Financial Times said something terrible about me, pull all of our advertising down. So I would say I learned how to be a corporate citizen at Blackrock. And I learned how to be like a strategic partner that'll carry me forward for the rest of my career. But underpinning all of this is, in order to be a good team member, you have to be a productive member of the team. So moving into the next slide, why am I qualified to teach you about this? I had a lot of time being not productive. So you can see on the left-hand side, this is a screenshot of my Instagram from June 18th, 2017. At 1:39 a.m., I ordered Domino's because I was working. In case you were wondering, June 18th, 2017 was a Sunday. So I would say that's a red flag. You shouldn't be working and ordering dinner, and maybe not Domino's, although it's always a good choice in my opinion. You shouldn't be doing all of that on a Sunday night. That's not the way you want to spend your career. So I would say, using a lot of these tips and tricks that I'm about to kind of go through with you guys, I became the person on the right-hand side who has figured out how to channel her type A from high school into the workplace. I have a color-coded calendar. I block off time on my calendar when I need work to get done. I write myself out scripts, like this one right here, and like what you see on the screenshot, to help me make sure that I've run through my presentation 3 or 4 times before I come to talk to anybody. I know all of the work in and out like the back of my hand. And then I save the scripts in case somebody else wants to use the deck down the road or something like that. I'm going to pause. I see a couple of comments, but I can't see what they are. Can somebody read the comments to me? Anything good?
Oh, I was just going to chime in and say, can you put your presentation in presentation mode?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's.
Right there.
How is that?
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, and I guess I can't see the comments pop up as I go. So if you guys see comments that we want to talk about, just unmute yourselves and tell me. Perfect. All right. So moving into the meat of the presentation, what is productivity and what does it look like in the workplace? Because it looks different than high school and college. By definition, productivity is, I would say, let's go to the second bullet there, the effectiveness of productive effort, especially in industry, measured in terms of the rate of output per unit of input. So it's not just about how much you're getting done over the course of the day, it's how efficiently you're using your time so that you're getting the most important work done at the most important times. And obviously productivity is applicable to literally any industry you're in across, the globe. What does it look like in the workplace, especially working in media, advertising, marketing, the surrounding kind of industries? I would say you're going to feel literal red flags if you're not as productive as you could be, or you're not managing your time as well as you could be and you're procrastinating. So obviously, what feels right? You feel like you're being responsible. Things are getting done on time. You don't feel like it takes you a million hours to get something done when it could only take 10 minutes. You're feeling calm and like you're producing high quality work. You're building yourself a positive reputation at wherever you are, whatever company you're at. And you feel like you understand what career growth opportunities exist, and you're picking up managers, mentors who are helping you see that path because people are taking a dedicated interest in you. On the right-hand side, of course, we all know what feels wrong when you procrastinate. You're stressed, you're exhausted, you're feeling overburdened, like you have too much on your plate. You're hurrying to get things done and maybe they're not as good as they would be otherwise. You're angry, you're pissed off at your teammates for putting this on your plate. Your work quality ends up not being as good as it could be. And at the very worst, you receive negative feedback from team members, which always hurts. So why is it important to be productive? I've broken this down into 3 Ps of the workplace because I think it's easiest to think in a focused type of framework. I don't think everybody needs to take these. This is just something I built. So I would say, like, you're not going to see it on Forbes or the Wall Street Journal or LinkedIn or wherever it is that you look for career advice. But as I was thinking about how I'm productive in the workplace, how I encourage others, whether they're incoming interns and analysts, team members that I'm hiring, people who've just moved to Blackrock and are having trouble adapting to the culture, I find myself always going back to this framework. And of course, kind of emphasizing different parts of it depending on what the conversation is. But I think it's helpful to have a framework at least to think through things. So no pressure if you don't like the framework. But I would say things fall into 3 categories: people, projects, and prioritization. So people, here are some recommendations on how to make sure you're getting the most out of all the people you're working with and they're getting the most out of you without it being a drain. Study the people around you. Find team members that have different styles of communications, different working styles, and learn from them. Understand whether, all right, my boss is not an email person, so I'm going to send him 1 email a day that aggregates all of the information he needs to know and all of the emails he needs to reply to attached in OneNote so that he knows to look for 1 note a day. Is he the kind of person who replies to all of their emails at 6 a.m. on Friday morning? Okay, then you know that, You want to be the last thing in his inbox on Thursday night so that it pops up at the top. Do they like meetings? Do they prefer emails? All of these, do they like long-winded emails with notes? Do they prefer a TLDR? Do they prefer an attachment? Do they prefer things in the body of an email? All of these things not only will help you manage your team and your relationships better, but learning to try these different methodologies will help you understand what's best for you. And as you become a people manager, you'll learn how to teach somebody how to manage you. For instance, my team knows if I go on vacation, I will send one email with like 5 to 7 things that I need them to keep track of while I'm away. Whether it's moving a project forward, just keeping an eye on emails, completing something, scheduling a meeting. I include all of it in an email so that they know they don't necessarily have to watch for everything else. And then when I get back from vacation the night before, somebody sends a wrap up that says, check the box, we did this. We accidentally kicked this can down the curb, but don't worry, we're getting it back under control. This meeting is scheduled for this time. But it helps me to know, all right, this is what my team spent their time on. And this is what I need to pick up and run with. So when you get back from vacation on a Monday morning and you have 14,000 unread emails, you know where to run. So I would say like that's been a really helpful one for me. And I know how to manage my different team members and my managers so that when something similar happens, we know how to make them as productive as possible, because part of your job will always be making sure your team members and managers are just as productive, if not more productive than you are, because they're the reflection of your team and your team's work to senior leadership. This second bullet is actually really, really helpful. I've used it a lot, and I would say the team members that work for me use it a lot too. When you get assigned a project, practice explaining it back to your manager in your own words. How did you understand what they asked you to do? This way, before you get started on something and spend a lot of hours making a beautiful PowerPoint, doing an analysis, whatever it might be, you know you're on the right track so that you're spending your time as effectively as possible. And then it opens the door for asking questions if you don't get it, making sure you have the right details in place. And then the next step after that, I would always suggest building yourself a timeline to hold you accountable. So rather than what I did with this presentation, which was I had a nice timeline. I talked to Maya last week and then I didn't work on it till last night. If you build yourself a timeline and you say, all right, I'm going to work on slides 1 through 5 today. I'm going to work on slides 2 through 7 on Sunday. By Wednesday, you're in great shape. You've read the deck enough times that you're prepped. You've seen all of the errors. You're all cleaned up and you didn't rush. You had no stress. You got to leave at 5 o'clock and go out with your coworkers for drinks. Didn't have to worry about it the next morning, and all's good in the world. And then lastly, I think we kind of touched on this through the other two, but be one step ahead always. So make sure you know what your manager's work is, what his or her preferences are, and what's going on the team more broadly, so that you can manage up, you make sure they look good so that then your team looks good. But you also know what projects are coming down the pike. So if there's something interesting or exciting or something you want to learn about because you don't know anything about it, you can ask early enough to get in on the ground floor. So that's like, I would say there's something about proactivity there, but there's also something about just being aware and caring enough to ask. All right, so maybe I'll pause there for a second. Does anybody have any questions so far?
I guess I'm Jensine. Hi, I have a question.
Hi.
So are there some questions, some core common questions that you would recommend someone asks when they start a first job to their manager or the team members? Some questions that come in mind?
When I told the girl who works for me that I was doing this presentation, she suggested the first question is always, how do you guys handle technology? Are you a laptop culture? Are you everybody comes to the meeting with a pad and a pen and nobody uses their computers and nobody multitasks? So I would say that's a big one because that varies widely by corporate culture. And if you walk in on your first day and everybody else is typing away at their laptops and you have a pen and paper, or vice versa, even worse, you're tapping away at your laptop and everybody thinks you're multitasking while they're paying attention to the task at hand, I will say that's really embarrassing. So that's a biggie. Find out how people use tech. I'd also say find out how they prefer to handle meetings, whether meetings are, and there's actually a guide down at the back of the deck that's helpful, but whether we use meetings to get alignment on things, make decisions, share information, and just more broadly, what the preferred mechanism for sharing information is. Is it body of an email? Is it put together a PowerPoint? Is it set up a meeting and talk people through it? I would always ask like what kind of a format is preferred so that you don't do work twice. And I would also say, similar to how I started this presentation, find out whether the team members you're working for are casual enough that they prefer questions peppered throughout the conversation and they want an active conversation, or if they'd prefer you send questions via email afterwards, they'd prefer to chat through it. So I would say like these are kind of questions that help you understand somebody's communication style better. But all of those I think are pretty good ones to start. Also, are they an Excel person or a PowerPoint person? If you're working in media or marketing, we use both, but some people have preferred methods of communication. I have a team member who doesn't even, believe in opening Excel. When you're 50 years old, then, you've won Emmys. You get to say you don't want to open Excels. But so I would find out, what people's preferred methods of consuming information are. Does that help?
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll move to the next P. Projects. This one's probably an easier one. Always have an understanding, like I mentioned, of what your team's goals are for the year. What are the projects they're working on across the year that ladder up to those goals? Who's managing each of those projects on your team? And what's in progress, what's happening, what are they digging into? Even if it's not something you're directly responsible for, always know what's happening in the ecosystem around you for a number of reasons. One, it makes it so that you are a better team member. If somebody is out sick, if somebody needs an extra hand, you can jump on board and dig in kind of quickly. Two, if it's like I said before, if it's something you're interested in, you think it would be a new challenge for you, you want to learn something new, it gives you the in to ask because you've kind of shown that you're being proactive and caring like ahead of time. Three, it helps you connect the dots, which I think is one of the biggest things that people find important as far as like soft skills go in a work environment. So being able to say, oh, I heard in Blackrock world, I heard you're doing a big partnership with the New York Times on retirement. Have you considered looping in Anne, who is working on a video on retirement so that we can maybe plan it all together? Or have you spoken to Stephanie, who's creating a new retirement product and marketing it to clients? So that when you have so much going on, we have 14,000 employees kind of running in different directions all the time. You're kind of like, imagine like you're taking a needle and thread and you're kind of stringing it through all of the people and pulling everyone together so that you have one unified output, or at least you're aware of people are kind of moving in different directions, doing things that don't necessarily line up to like a company's priorities. It's always good to have at least a tangential awareness of everything happening around you. And then this is another tip from a younger woman who works for me. I thought it was a really good one, and it kind of feeds into the next slide too, but keep a separate tracker, whether you're a list person, whether you like the Notes app, of all the ongoing projects, associated timelines, important meetings you're working towards, and deadlines, so that not only are you holding yourself accountable for your own projects, but you're helping to hold your team accountable. You know, if somebody gets bogged down in a last minute ask for something else, but they have that project that's being presented Monday morning at 9 a.m., you know, and you can say, hey, Graciela, she's my boss. Hey, Graciela, I know you're working on this and you're bogged down. Is there something I can take off your plate? And being proactive really helps. So like what I will do is, if it's I don't take meetings on Fridays. So if it's a Friday and I see Graciela has something big, you know, that she just got pulled into, I'll say, I'm sure you have all the content ready for your presentation Monday, but how does it look? Do you want me to take the deck and clean it up for you? Do you want me to go over and make sure there are no typos? Do you want me to pull some stats for your voiceover or how you're talking through the presentation? All of these things just kind of help your team move forward and be as successful as they can possibly be. I see a couple of comments. Anything worth addressing right now? No? Any other questions on this one?
Now, it was just a comment from Maya, just saying it's important to be able to tie together your team's projects.
Yes, absolutely. And it'll also help you more broadly over the course of your career. It'll help you understand the things that you're interested in, the things that you're not interested in, and how to network better. Because you're never gonna, or almost never, are you going to meet somebody who has your exact same job description at another company, who does your exact same cookie cutter job. But if you're able to connect the dots and see common threads, you'll end up being able to relate to that person in different ways, which can set you up for career growth down the road. Or at the very least, it sets you up for a strong relationship with that person. All right, prioritization. This one is the most important and also the hardest, I would say, especially as like a young person entering the workplace, because you don't always have 100% control over your time. What you do have 100% control over is, on a daily basis, make sure you're prioritizing your must complete tasks. So I keep 2 lists, as does Gabby, who's on my team, at any given time, my projects list and my must completes for the day. And at the end of every day, even if everything goes completely haywire, I make sure I keep I make sure I get all those things done. And I try to keep it to 2 or 3 things so that it's not difficult to accomplish. You know, we're not trying to run a marathon, but you know, there are certain things where you would kick the can down the curb if you didn't absolutely say to yourself, I have to get this done today. I have to get this done today. So just having it written down as one of your 3 things, to me, means I can't close the laptop until I've done it. If there's a way that's better for you to force yourself to do the work, more power to you. But for me, when there are things I really don't want to do, they get added to this list, so I make sure they get done. Check in with your manager to make sure you're focusing on the right things at the right time. I like to have, even though I talk to my team on Slack all day, every day, basically, I like to have a Monday morning check-in and a Friday morning check-in. So on Mondays, we talk through, all right, here's what's on the list for this week. Here are the important meetings we may need to prep for. Here's where I need you to cover off for me because I don't want to attend. Here's where, you know, here are a couple talking points for this meeting in case you go, whatever it might be. And then on Friday, we talk through and say, all right, here's how everything went this week. This got done, this didn't, here's why. My door is always open. You can, like, my team knows they can call me, text me, Slack me, email me any time of the day. And if they need something, I will drop everything to help. But this is just helpful because it helps me keep a pulse on my team's productivity, if there are any gaps or red flags as far as like what we're set out to achieve for the year and what's getting done, I'm able to address it quickly. And it also helps me to keep a pulse on performance, my top performers versus team members that are slacking a little bit behind. I think twice a week can be a bit much as your team grows. I can do it for 3 team members, 4 team members, but I would say like at the point where you hit or where you have a manager that has like 5+ team members or whatever it might be, it may not make sense to have a meeting twice a week. But I also think it makes my team feel like they have the support they need from me and they have the right open lines of communication to ask for help, ask for a draft review, whatever it might be at any time, which I think especially early on in your career is really important because it helps you kind of foster your own ways of working in the workplace and it helps you learn and grow. So I would encourage you to suggest something like that if that format works for you. If it's via email, I would suggest that. But make sure you're checking in with your manager and they know what you're working on. I'm a multitasker. I always have been. I probably always will be. My hands are itching right now. I'm literally sitting on them because I can see emails coming in and text messages coming in. Do not multitask. I don't recommend it. If you haven't gotten into it, don't. Because sometimes what I find is at the end of the meeting, either I realize I haven't caught anything that's happened and I then need to go back and ask questions, which is kind of embarrassing. Or even worse, you make the people who are presenting, speaking up, feel less than, which is never anybody's intention. And, you know, whoever is speaking, I get social anxiety. I'm really shy. You want to feel like everybody's engaged with what you're saying. You want to feel like people are paying attention, people are learning and listening. And if you're multitasking, no matter how good you are at looking straight at that camera while typing, you'll know. And it feels a little sad. So I'm working on getting rid of that addiction and it's tough, but I would say like all of our CMOs, our CEO, even when we transitioned to virtual work, they were really, really laser focused on whatever was happening in that meeting in front of them. And I think that's really admirable. So that's something I'm working towards on my own. If you're assigned a new project, always ask how it fits into your existing priorities. You may not always get to say, all right, I have 10 other projects that are due that Friday. Can we move this back a day? Can we move one of these up? But it's always important to ask. And it's good to put up that boundary from the very beginning and kind of say, this is what's on my plate. I can't get all of it done if you add one more thing to the list. So something's got to give, something's got to move. I'm sure, you know, you guys are all used to professors in college not giving you that leeway. And you have to study for 5 midterms or 5 finals in the course of a week. You have 10 papers due, whatever it might look like. But in the workplace, I would say there's a little more flexibility there. So it never hurts to ask. It never hurts to say, I have too much work. It's not going to get done well. Can we move a deadline back? At worst, somebody says no. And then they know that you're the kind of team member that will work your butt off to get it done. But you shouldn't always have to work your butt off. There's an easier way sometimes. Okay, I'll pause again here. Any thoughts, questions, comments?
Yeah, hi, Lauren. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to ask, how do you get the most out of productivity in a virtual environment?
It's funny you ask that because I have a slide a little later on boundaries, and I would say that's a big part of it. All of the things that we kind of talked about till now help you build trust with your team. If you're able to communicate in the right way with your team members, stay on top of tasks, it's easier to transition in a case like COVID where we went home one day and we're told not to come back to the office for the foreseeable future. It's easier to transition to virtual because you trust that the team members are actually working during work hours and not going and futzing around. And you trust if somebody's offline, like it's important to them to be offline at that time. So I would say like building up the right foundation ahead of a situation like this is key. And I think if you start a new job now, I have a cousin in the next room over who's starting a new job literally this week. Start out by being that person. Be the first one online. Make sure you're kind of over communicating what you're working on so that you're building the right foundation so that when you need leeway, when you need wiggle room, when you want to, you know, I just got a puppy, when you want to take your dog for 5 walks a day, everybody knows you're there, you're dependable. But I would say more important than ever are all of those check-ins that I have with my team, all of those status meetings. We have buddies. Gabby will chat me a couple times during the day to say like, I'm working on this. What do you think? It's constant communication really keeps up that relationship when you can't have in-person conversation. And then like on your own, making sure you're productive, I would say, block out time on your calendar where you have to get those 3 must-have things done during the day and sit yourself down at your desk or, you know, your couch, wherever you're more comfortable working, and don't leave until you finish that 1 item or 2 items or 3 items. You can even tell your boss, all right, I'm going to have this to you by 3 o'clock. And then, you know, 3 o'clock is the deadline. You got to get it done. Self-imposed deadlines are helpful, and having a manager who kind of will hold you accountable is helpful too. I would also say, as far as boundaries go, try to keep yourself to the same schedule you would have in the office. If your team starts at 8, start at 8. If your team starts at 10, start at 10. If everybody logs off at 5:30, log off at 5:30. Just because I'm saying this and I'm not very good at it myself, but just because you're at home now doesn't mean work bleeds into every other aspect of your life. Protect your time where you can. But also make sure you're getting your work done so that when, you know, you want to take a vacation day or you want to leave early one afternoon, everybody trusts that the work is done and you're in good shape. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much.
I have a question about that. So like when you're new to an internship or a job and like you're learning these kind of new skills, like at least for me, like art, like creative, I feel like everything's taking me like 10 million times longer to learn. And I was wondering, how do you balance kind of like wanting to kind of keep up with the team and get things done, but like not being able to fit that in like the 9 to 5 window?
Tell me a little bit more about that. Like paint me a picture of your day and where the conflicts come into play.
Yeah, so like I was put on, I guess, 2 projects last week, and one of them was like brainstorming, and I didn't have time to brainstorm because I had like a more like necessary deadline that was on Thursday night, and the internship's only Monday to Thursday. And so I spent time like Friday and over the weekend kind of doing the other thing, even though like not my work hours, and I felt like burnt out. And I was wondering just like how to balance, I guess, like managing your time when you're kind of like slower at the beginning.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I won't lie to you, that'll happen sometimes. You'll have to get everything done and it's just, you know, they wouldn't pay you if it were just for fun. But what you can do is you can go to the manager for the project that has the Thursday deadline and say, listen, I'm not going to be able to get this part of the project done on time. Be really clear about the part of the project. If there's like a part you can carve out, be really clear about the part that won't get accomplished. So I'm accomplishing 3/4 of it, but not the last 4 slides. I'm building 10 banner ads, but not 11. I'm sending 5 emails, but not the 6th. Be really clear about what's not getting done because you've been asked by another team member to complete X, which you think will take the brainstorm, for instance, which you think is going to take 2 hours of your time. So that you're kind of saying, I'm still doing 95% of this project. You can still count on me. I know explicitly the part that won't get done, and I'll pick that back up on Monday morning, but I have to do the project assigned to me by the other person. And at the very worst, your manager should feel comfortable going to the person who assigned the other task and saying, I really need her to finish this entire project by Thursday. Can she have till Monday for the brainstorm? Part of being a manager is you got to buffer for your team. You have to be kind of fearless and full of defense for your team and make sure that they're working in the most productive way possible while not burning out, because they should care about you long term and how you feel about your career growth in that place, which means they don't want you to burn out. They don't want you to be pissed off. They don't want you to be doing crappy slipshod work. They want you to have your weekend, come back with fresh eyes. And usually, if you don't have to overburden yourself, you come back Monday morning and you're better, faster, smarter than had you worked late on Thursday or whatever it might be. But I would say definitely lean on your boss. Kind of say like, not all of this fits. How should I fix it?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
For what it's worth, if a member of my team came to me and said that, as a manager, you find a way. You work it out for your team because that's the right thing to do. Any other questions? All right.
So regarding,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So
No,
regarding
go ahead.
procrastination, what is a daily actionable item or something you can add to your routine to, I guess, beat the spirit of procrastination?
I start every morning with a cup of coffee and rewriting my to-do list for the day.
Awesome.
And at the
Thank you.
end of the day, I wrap up, sometimes with a glass of wine, sometimes not, and cross everything off so that I know what's gotten done. And I don't know about you guys, but there's something really soothing about crossing things off the list. I think Maya's nodding along with me. But part of it is like, you get into a routine where that becomes soothing for you. It takes some time, you may have to force it for a little bit first.
Yes, 100%, Lauren. Just crossing things off of my to-do list really gives me that sense of completeness, and I might even get anxiety if I just like have things done but don't cross it off, because then I feel like, oh my God, there's so much more that I need to do that's not done. But it's like, oh wait, you finished that. You just didn't cross it off your list.
I won't lie. There are times when I add something to the list that I've already done just so that I can cross it off.
Okay.
I know we're basically at time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through what's in the next couple of slides, and you guys can, read it at your leisure. It's kind of the easier section. So tips and tricks. Here's some kind of action. I know we talked about it along the way, but here are some kind of actionable items that you can do and kind of take to your first job, second job, whatever it might be. It kind of wraps up what we talked about the previous slides and what we've kind of had the conversation about, but it's all here on one slide. Next, just some broader recommendations on how to be the best team member you can be and how to be productive. These are some suggestions that I either started my work life with, or people kind of told me really quickly, things I prefer from team members when they first start on my team, that just make things move a little smoother and help you build up your reputation as a team member. Setting boundaries, super important. And then this is a quote my boss uses almost every day, because a lot of times we get asked to revise things again and again and again. You always have time to do things twice, make revisions, but you never have time to do things right the first time. So take the time you need to do things right the first time, because it'll save you down the road. And then I've included some articles and things that I kind of reflected on as I was putting together this presentation. I found them helpful. Some of them include work from home tips specifically, because you may be transitioning to a job that's either just remote right now or will be remote forever. So just some helpful reading if and when you have a moment. And then here's the reference grid I mentioned, probably when you get into a work environment, when to have meetings, when to do something via the phone, when to do something, via email. this works for me. You may want to build your own for your team, depending on, what's right for you guys. But this is something that our team does, so that when meetings don't make sense, we cancel them. And that's it. So
Awesome.
I think we're at time, but if anybody has any other questions, I don't want to take up time from your next slot. You can feel free, Maya, feel free to share my email address, feel free to share the presentation. Contact me at any time. I'm happy to do a one-on-one session, whatever is best for you guys. I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lauren. And if you feel comfortable, you can drop your LinkedIn in the chat for our interns to further connect with you. We really appreciate this intensive presentation. I hope you all took notes, but if not, we will definitely send this over to you all. And I hope this will help you all to be more productive and not be so procrastinating all the time. So now we are, thank you so much. We are going to move right on over to our next session. We are going to be bringing you all your favorite camera company, Snap. And today, Brett Wein is going to be taking us through what life is like at Snapchat, or Snap, I should say, so you all can have a little bit more insight into what the company is about. So, Brett, I'm going to look for you in the audience. Do I see you?
I'll start waving.
Oh, here you are. Hold on. Hey, Brett.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good, good. So good seeing you. I'm trying to spotlight you.
I got him.
I already did it. Oh, perfect. Great. Thank you, Maya. See, we're a good tag team. Hey, Brett. So I hand it over to you.
Awesome. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to everybody today. I have two esteemed colleagues with me somewhere on this Zoom. I have Rich Grasmuck. He should be here somewhere, as well as Jack Bernard. They're going to help kind of tell the story of Snap a little bit for you all today. But before we begin, I get to do something fun. I assume most of you on the call are Snapchat users, and if not, totally understand. But just by like a quick, maybe we'll do like a quick thing in the chat. I'd love to see who has the highest Snap score out of the 40 some odd people on the call. So if you're brave enough to share it, if you think you have a high one, love to see it. And there may be maybe a prize in your mailbox afterwards that we'll arrange. So feel free to plug that in, and we'll take a look at the. Oh, I see some triple. Oh, that's a good one, Alexa.
This is so exciting, Brett. I just want you to know I'm going to lose.
Okay, well, we're going to ask for proof on that high one. I think I saw. But anyway, let's dive in really quickly. I'll give you like an abbreviated version of my background and kind of what has ended up bringing me to Snap. I'll start off like I went to school at the University of Maryland. Had no clue what I wanted to do with myself after even after 2 years in college. Stumbled into an internship for a company at the time called Bertelsmann Music Group, otherwise known as BMG. They were one of the largest music distributors on the planet at that point in time, working with record labels like Arista, RCA, Jive, and I'll date myself and throw out some of the artists that we were promoting at the time, things like the Backstreet Boys and Puff Daddy was coming onto the scene. So it was a lot of fun for me. And I quickly turned that into a career after school. BMG hired me on full time in a marketing role. Did that for about 2 years and realized very quickly that I saw like the underbelly of something that I was passionate about, which was the music business. And I just did not find that much interest in it, besides the fact that they weren't paying me very much to do what I did. But I had kind of like a little bit of a session with at the time my stepfather and another mentor of mine, and took a job in the fashion industry just on a whim. It was a sales role. I had never sold a thing in my entire life, and they eventually moved me to New York. I was based in Los Angeles at the time, but they eventually moved me to New York City. And when I got to New York, I realized that the fashion business was not for me as well. But it was the late '90s, and the late '90s was around the time of like the first .com boom. And I remember there was an old job board called I'll get the acronym wrong, but it was something like the New York New Media Association. And I submitted a very generic resume there. I had 3 companies reach out to me right away for entry-level positions. I took a gamble on one of them and landed at a company called Ask Jeeves. And that was a little over 21 years ago. So it just, based on the fact that you're interns, you may or may not remember 21 years ago. But Ask Jeeves was one of the first search engines that came around, and started out as like an associate account manager. We'll explain what roles are in a minute. Eventually worked my way up to an account manager, and then to an account executive, which is a salesperson. And then I was poached by a company in 2002, a company called Overture. Overture was a company that started pay-per-click search advertising, what we now know as search advertising. They had 85% market share at the time. They were running all the major websites. This was long before the iPhone was a thing. Running all the major websites from a search perspective, and it was a great company. And eventually, they were swallowed by, at the time, the biggest fish in the pond, Yahoo. Yahoo bought them in 2003. I spent a long and lengthy time at Yahoo doing a variety of different things. One thing I did was my team managed the relationship with Pepsi at the time, and Pepsi was one of Yahoo's biggest advertisers. And around 2008, I received a call from a little startup called Facebook, and Facebook said, "Why don't you come on over? We heard good things about you. We heard you know Pepsi inside and out. We'd love to have you come on board." And I said, "Well, is it a management position?" And they said, "No, it's not a management position. It's an individual contributor. You would be selling to Pepsi." And I said, "I'm not interested." And they called me back a couple months later and said, "Are you sure you're not interested?" I said, "Well, all right, if you're coming after me this hard, let me come in and at least meet with the people." And I went in and I met the people, and I love the folks that I met with, and started kind of thinking more and more about what I was spending my time doing in late 2008, early 2009, and saw myself and my wife spending much more time on Facebook. So I said, "You know what, I'm gonna take a chance on this thing," and I went over as an individual contributor, took a downgrade in terms of pay, a downgrade in terms of title, but rolled the dice with a company that eventually became what it is today. And I'm sharing that piece because you're going to see as you embark in your careers, there are a lot of different opportunities that are going to come your way. Sometimes it's a promotion, sometimes it might be a lateral move. Other times it may be a downgrade, but you have to do what's best for yourself and what your gut's telling you to do. And that worked out very well for me. 6 years after starting at Facebook, I was one of the very early employees. I think we were 500 people at the time. The company's now probably 50,000 people. 6 years later, I decided to take a pause from Facebook, and I wanted to spend time with my wife and my 4 kids. And while I was taking a little bit of a reprieve, I got a call from a little company called Snapchat. And they said they heard good things about me, and they were interested if I wanted to come over and have a conversation. And now, nearly 6 years later, I'm still enjoying my time at Snapchat. So I wanted to share that journey because, and I did it very quickly, hopefully. What you're embarking on, there's no way to tell where you're going to go from the first job that you enter into. My first job was in music, in marketing. Then I went into the fashion industry for a heartbeat in like a sales role. And then I ended up in advertising. And advertising to me has been like the best thing that's ever happened to me, mainly because I'm passionate about media, I'm passionate about technology, and I'm passionate about culture. And I think like advertising wraps those 3 together very quickly and succinctly. So it's been a blast for me. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware, like you hear about like climbing the corporate ladder. It's more of a jungle gym. Like people have said that to me many times over my life. And it's true. Like, it's a mess eventually, like, and eventually you land where you should have landed. So with that, I want to like just kind of give an idea of how we're structured at Snapchat. And I talk very fast. I'm sorry, I'm an East Coaster. If anybody wants me to pause and answer any questions, let me know. But at Snapchat, we have a variety of opportunities for people coming in from kind of an entry level position. And it's funny, a lot of people think when they hear like Snapchat or Google or Facebook or Twitter, like the mind immediately goes to it's probably an engineering type role, but there's a huge aspect of all of those companies and more that's more business related. And advertising is the lifeblood of most of those companies that I talked about. So what I'd like to do is just kind of spend some time talking about how we're structured at Snapchat. It's very similar at Facebook, at Google, at Twitter. So it hopefully will give you an idea of what like the corporate structures are from a sales perspective. And sales sometimes is a dirty word for people, but as an executive from AT&T once told me, it's probably the most admirable position on the planet, because you're putting yourself out there and you're going to get shot down. 90% of the time you get shot down, but it's that 10% of the time where you win that you feel successful. So I'll give you an understanding of the structure, how we're set up, and again, like use that as a mirror for how all the other major platforms are set up. And then I figured I'd let Rich and Jack kind of walk you through something that they did, some campaigns that they did for one of their brands to show how it all kind of comes to life. Does that work for everybody? Thumbs up. Okay, cool. All right. Well, at Snapchat, we're a growing company. We're not nearly as big from an employee standpoint as our competitive set. But the way that we've structured things is we essentially have like three different sales groups. We have small and medium-sized businesses, which the name justifies it. It's basically any kind of small or upcoming company. It could be everything from a local pizzeria that wants to advertise with Snapchat up to somebody who has a new startup with 4 employees. We have a team out in Santa Monica where we're headquartered, and I believe we have an office in Denver, Colorado. And those teams are strictly focused on trying to bring in new advertisers, like small to medium-sized businesses onto our platform. We also have what we call an emerging team, and the emerging team works a lot with a lot of the direct-to-consumer brands or DTC brands that exist out there. So, think about like Harry's Shaving or any kind of like beauty DTC brand that might be out there. They work a lot with all the fintech brands. They work with like the non-complex businesses that my team works with. So my team is what we call the enterprise team, and we are responsible for most, if not all, of the Fortune, let's call it Fortune 250 brands that exist out there that have like complex organizations, work with a multitude of advertising agencies, need a little bit more handholding than somebody who has like a small team that can go in and handle like the advertising themselves. So my team is responsible for all consumer packaged good brands. That's everybody from Procter & Gamble to Unilever to PepsiCo to Coke, all financial service advertisers, the big banks, Chase and Citibank, et cetera. All the telecoms, which I could probably rattle off in three words: Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T, as well as all of the pharmaceutical companies, all of the government entities, whether it's Department of Defense or FDA, as well as all the political ads that happen every 2 years on Snapchat. So for me, it's the dream job, because it gives me a little bit of a purview across a multitude of businesses. 1 minute I could be talking about the 2020 election cycle. The next minute I could be talking to Rich and Jack about Red Bull, which is one of their clients. So it gives me a chance to kind of like use my many areas of my brain, not just the mathematical side, which is tremendously important from an advertising standpoint, but also creativity, also problem solving. Oftentimes the teams will come to me and say, Brett, we're facing a conundrum. We need some help with X or Y. And there's nothing more that I love than just helping the team kind of dig in and problem solve. So with that, like, I think what I would love to do is give a little bit of an overview of how the team is structured. So you have guys like me, and there are women in my position as well that run teams. I'm the head of US verticals, so I have two other counterparts that run other verticals outside of my scope. So a woman who runs retail and restaurants and travel, and another counterpart who runs technology brands, entertainment brands, and automotive. And we work very closely together. And then underneath them, there's a management layer. And those managers run respective verticals. So I have a woman who runs all of consumer packaged goods, and she has managers that report into her that are divided up into kind of sub verticals. So There's CPG, and then we have things like beauty, we have things like food and bev, we have things like home care, and those are all managed by separate people. And Rich represents one of the salespeople on the food and bev team, again, working closely with Red Bull, with Monster. He also works with Clorox. And then Jack's the account manager on the business. Jack and Rich, they are like the dynamic duo. Anytime you have an account executive, account manager, and they're truly working together in a symbiotic way, like the business just grows. Rich is more of client facing. He's tasked with growing the business, getting out and meeting new people, evangelizing, educating the marketplace within the walls of Red Bull or Monster or Clorox, like what the value proposition is of Snapchat. And then once he has somebody that's interested in the platform, whether it's through the client or the agency directly, Jack gets involved as well in terms of like how do we bring a campaign to life on Snapchat. And I think instead of me talking, maybe Rich, I'd love for you and Jack to kind of walk through an example of a campaign that you guys brought to life from start to finish, if that's okay with you.
Sounds great. Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share screen. There you go. Is everyone able to see the screen?
We got it, Rich.
All right. So as Brett mentioned, hi, everyone. My name is Rich. I'm an account executive on our CPG vertical, focused mostly on food and beverage brands. And today, Jack and I are going to take you through an exciting campaign that we ran for Monster Energy. It was towards the end of 2020. So first, we'll share a bit of how the campaign came to be, explain like why Snapchat should be a key partner, some of the challenges that we faced throughout the various phases of the overall process, share a fun sizzle of the campaign and kind of show you what it all really looked like. And then Jack will peel things back a bit and give you a peek under the hood, really on how we managed the campaign. Ultimately, as Brett mentioned, this should give you a sense of what goes into a campaign from beginning to end and shed some light on what a day, what life is like working in sales at Snap. So there's definitely a lot to it. Feel free to chime in if you do have questions throughout. Happy to answer those. Since I'm presenting, I can't see questions in the chat, but feel free to speak up. So kind of like quick story on how it all started. It was at the end of a meeting in early 2020 where one of the clients loosely mentioned to have a big campaign later in the year where they're going to be working with a gaming partner. So we took this nugget of information to probe a bit further and provide a proactive recommendation based on a small brief. When I say brief, really, it was just kind of a handful of nuggets that they shared with us. They want to increase their presence within the gaming community. They want to create engaging experiences that surprise and delight Halo fans with XP, something that I learned at the beginning of this campaign. So XP is a way that Halo fans can get more in-game experiences. So in this instance, it was a skin for some of the ammunition. And then, of course, they also want to drive sales of the can itself, right? They're in the business of selling energy drinks. So of course, a key component to anything they do ultimately wants to ladder back to driving sales of those cans. So Monster is quite familiar with Snapchat and our strong positioning with augmented reality through lenses. Some of you might know them as filters, but they're the ones you apply on your face. So augmented reality. And we knew that Snap was uniquely positioned with our AR capabilities. This coupled with Snap codes and the ability to connect physical products to a digital experience, really, like I said, it put Snap in a unique position to help bring to life some of those objectives that they wanted to accomplish. Heroing the can, providing a surprise and delight, and reaching gamers in a fun and unique way. So this would make it easy for us to lead with AR, hit on a number of those key objectives. But that said, we still needed to make sure they are confident that Snapchat is the right platform for reaching gamers, right? Like, as we mentioned in the beginning, they want to reach gamers. So with that, we dug into a number of the different tools, working with our measurement and insights team, and to help understand, like, how can we make sure that Monster is confident that Snapchat is the right platform to reach gamers. So don't need to read all of this, but just to kind of give you a sense of some of the insights that we're able to pull here to help uncover the why Snapchat specifically for gamers. We dug into some of the insights tool And what you can see, so like there's a few things that stand out. As I mentioned, we were going to lean heavily into augmented reality. So if you look over at the right, 90% of gamers on Snapchat use Lens Carousel on a monthly basis. And then looking at the bottom there, energy drink gamers over index as energy drink consumers by 1.7. So a few key nuggets and insights can go a long way. Anytime, whether you're trying to sell something to a client or just position things, really lean heavily into key insights that can go a long way. So definitely something to keep in mind really throughout anything, right? Is make sure that you're able to back things with data or certain insights that can help provide a convincing story. So that's some of the things we leaned into on the why Snapchat. In terms of execution, as mentioned a couple of times now, we really wanted to lean into augmented reality. So what does that look like in terms of the distribution itself? A couple things. One, as you see here, so on the left, through a Lens experience that would be distributed through paid media. This would be accessed in the Lens Carousel, as well as through Snap Ads. And then also they had 3 key months of this campaign, September, October, November, where each month would be tied to a unique experience that would be unlocked on snap codes that would live on the can. So here's kind of like a, no need to read this, but just to kind of show you, as this is a bit of an eyesore, but to kind of show you more of a detailed flow chart of what the experience looks like on paper for each of the 3 months. Really, and it's designed to keep the Monster can at the forefront of the experience while unlocking that surprise and delight so that gamers would be able to, at the end of each month, come back, get more Monster to also get that surprise and delight with the Halo XP. So we had this great plan in mind. And then all of a sudden, like most campaigns, this one did not come without any unforeseen challenges. So we had a major hurdle, and that was that the Halo game itself was delayed. So it's no longer going to come out in December as initially planned, largely due to COVID. Some of the gaming developers over at Microsoft for Halo, they weren't able to come into the office and access necessary hardware. So that's ultimately what caused the game launch to delay. Those are things that are completely out of our control, but Monster still has these cans. They've already been wrapped and co-branded with all the Halo branding, and they're going in market. So we still need to move forward with our campaign. So now, as you can see here, we had to pivot. So this led to a series of calls with all the different stakeholders, whether that be Halo, the creative agency, the media agency, of course, the Monster clients. And ultimately, we kind of thought, well, why don't let's think about what we can control, what is impacted, what's not impacted. And ultimately, we decided to pivot some of the creative. So here's a quick glimpse of one of the Halo, the Lens experiences. And over here, the third one you see on the right, basically we would have Master Chief glitch out, and then you would see here, bank now, play later, XP will be ready when Chief is. So since the game wasn't going to be ready, we still wanted to give gamers the ability to get the XP and then come back once the game itself is released. So that's kind of a quick story on the campaign, how it came to be, a little bit of information on some of the challenges we faced and how we pivoted. Next, I'm going to show you guys a quick, which kind of shows really a larger picture of the overall campaign. And then Jack's going to share a little bit more about his experience working with this campaign.
4 times for the days that were all back. 5 times for the they call back. 6 times for the kids like me who got ADHD. Just whoa, turn the whole world to a crisis. Whoa, walk around the city with an ice pick. I'm a paranoid. Usually I ain't like this. Ain't no telling how crazy I like it. Whoa, beat the police with a nice stick. In my whole life I've been lifeless. Now I'm so fly, I'm a bump. Till I pass out. Whoa, throwing stones at my glass house. Whoa. I remember sleeping on my dad's couch. Whoa. Now I got the Bentley and it's blacked out. Whoa. Family looking at me like a cash cow. Whoa. Everybody just to have clout. Whoa. Thought you had a chance.
So there's a quick video that we shared with Monster. They had a big internal kind of span across several organizations to showcase the Snapchat partnership across this campaign. So That's kind of a cool look there at the overall campaign. And with that, I will turn things over to Jack.
Cool. Hey, everyone. Thanks, Rich. There we go. So I thought this slide, while it's a little bit numbers and text heavy in itself, I thought it'd be helpful for you to see, as it kind of just provides a macro level analysis of the actual campaign that we executed. All of the paid media components are in here. So it's essentially what the campaign looks like on paper. So for each of our campaigns that we go about executing, we build out this same sort of roadmap in a way, and we relay it to the client's post-campaign. So it really helps us to provide those hard numbers or reasoning behind why the campaign was successful or not. So we'll typically look at things like, especially within CPG, reach and frequency, especially as it relates to what do those numbers look like in totality across ad products. And ultimately, we use some of those metrics to determine the campaign's effectiveness. So in this instance, Rich touched on it, but we had an objective of driving that general awareness of the partnership. So that being Monster Energy and Halo Infinite, the game release. And at the end of the day, we were actually trying to drive those can sales as well. Luckily, we blurred out some of the numbers here, but we were able to deliver on both of those goals. Cool. And again, a little bit less glamorous here, but I thought this would be helpful for y'all to see. This is actually a screenshot from our Snapchat Ads Manager UI. The entire campaign, aside from those snap codes on cans, which I actually have one right here, it was managed through this platform, through our Ads Manager platform. And really, Ads Manager does serve as an integral part of any campaign. And I like to kind of think of it as the playing field for monitoring that campaign's progress and really looking into some of the data and insights that you saw earlier, and ultimately discovering those potential areas of optimization. You know, where can we shift money? What audience is performing better than X? Should we put more money here versus there? What have you? So with that, I did pause here. Do you guys have any questions as it relates to Ads Manager specifically? Have any of you had any experience with Ads Manager in general across any partners?
I just want to start with one of the questions that was in the chat. It's from Jensine Mathis. She said, "Did you get this data merely from running the ads?"
Yes. So what you can't see here, we actually have a whole insights platform built into our Ads Manager. So again, while you can't see it, we can go in and see different things where specific, Snapchatters are over-indexing in one interest affinity versus another. So we can actually in real time kind of go in and alter a campaign's course if need be, or expand our targeting, or what have you. So I know it's a little difficult to speak to, but in actuality, you can see those things within our platform. Sure. We can probably pop to the next one, Rich.
Oh, I see Abigail raised her hand. Abigail, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a question. So when you are using like the ad manager, how often do you usually check the impressions do you check them daily, weekly, quarterly, like throughout the campaign?
Yep.
How often would you check them?
Yeah, great question. So this is something as an account manager, this is my Bible. I'm in here every day. It's also something that the Monster client themselves or their managing agency team, they'd be in here as well. So there's all sorts of levers you can pull, all sorts of data you can see. But typically I check these sorts of pacing. I do these sorts of exercises, 1 to 2 to 3 times a week, dependent upon that campaign length. So this campaign ran for 3 months, so I was checking it on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, and something else when when Jack's going in here, oftentimes if he sees some sort of insight that's worth calling out, he'll share that with the media agency who's actively managing this on their end, and help use that as an opportunity to be consultative and educate them on how they can maximize the platform as well. You're oftentimes with agencies, maybe there's new team members that come into the mix, or maybe certain agencies just aren't in that cadence of checking a campaign maybe quite as frequently as they should be. So those are opportunities for Jack to also act in a consultative manager and make sure the agencies are acting on the best behalf possible for their clients.
So then do you go back often to revise like objectives or anything?
Typically, we stick to an objective, just knowing that's kind of like the antithesis of the campaign. That's what it's based off of. But we will adjust things. We can bid on different objectives. So if we did want to scrap it and start fresh, we could. We can add in different audiences, increase or decrease our bids, add in a variety of creatives. So there's quite a few things we can do once a campaign is actually live.
Yeah, I think to ground that, and Jack touched on it, like if we see one piece of creative that's working exponentially better than the rest, we can kind of glean insights from that and figure out like what's driving it, and can we quickly create other creative that maybe has similar attributes and launch those and just do kind of A/B testing to continue to kind of increase the performance from a creative standpoint.
Yep. At the end of the day, a lot of our recommendations are truly rooted in data. So we're always looking for those hard numbers when possible.
Thank you.
Of course. Cool. And then just to wrap on those previous two slides, here's an overview of all the media that ran over the course of the 3-month flight. So to the left, you can see those augmented reality experiences. These were all unlocked via Snapcode on CAN, which we discussed earlier. These experiences were actually rotated out on a monthly basis. So on the back end, I would go in and physically swap the experience out. So if you bought a CAN in September and then decided to scan it in October, it would show a different experience than it did the month prior. And then on the right here, you see our Snap ads and commercials. These were deployed and managed directly within that Snapchat Ads Manager UI that we saw on the previous slide. And then as you see up there, that's actually the snap code that is printed on the can, which you can see there in that middle frame, the October. That's actually still live. So if you are to pull out your Snapchat app and scan it now, it will unveil the Master Chief selfie experience that you see there on the left. There you go. Keep scanning.
Jack and Rich, is that it for the slides?
Oh, one more.
One more.
Yep. I thought it'd be helpful. I just pulled together kind of some overall roles and responsibilities that I, as an account manager here at Snap, kind of follow on a daily basis. And obviously these were very applicable to a campaign of this magnitude with Monster Halo. So Rich definitely hit the nail on the head earlier with this, but expect the unexpected, be ready to pivot and be nimble. As an account manager, it's kind of the nature of our role, and more so even our industry in general of tech and social. There's constantly new changes and capabilities being released really on a regular basis, and you have to be ready to change that course at any time. Secondly here, there's obviously lots of parties and variables involved in a campaign like this, and I've really never found it to be an issue to over communicate and almost be a nuisance in that sense. And don't be afraid to CC an extra person on your email or what have you. Thank you for the Bitmoji compliment. But I always err on the side of over communicating really, and ensuring that I'm providing as clear of a recommendation or direction as possible. Thirdly here, check, recheck, ask your friend to double check your work. This is especially applicable to a campaign like this when we have literally millions of snap codes printed on cans that are out in the wild. So a quick side story here, when we moved forward with this entire campaign and actually had these cans produced, the snap code did not work. So luckily we had a number of layers in place from a QA standpoint and checking our work progress that this was caught early on, and ultimately we were able to mitigate the issue. But lesson learned here that you have to have those layers in place. You have to ask someone to check your work. It's something that you're going to continue to do in the real world and not just in college. It's a very important piece of a role like an account manager. Always be optimizing. That's what I like to say. Always be asking questions and looking for areas to improve. Obviously, ads manager is kind of the key playing ground in my role for this. Although I am an account manager, I try to act as an analyst in a way, and kind of poke holes in things and ask questions where I can. So I highly suggest you do the same. And then lastly here, not to make a play on my name, but act as a jack of all trades, or a Swiss Army knife, what have you. As an account manager, I truly do touch and act on all areas of the business, whether I'm working, directly with our marketing science or measurement team, putting my creative hat on and literally being a creative strategist, working with our analysts to solve or answer questions, and then obviously driving sales at the end of the day. So my biggest piece of advice to you is really be willing to step out of your comfort zone. It's something that I myself am consistently doing on a daily, weekly basis. And if you're willing to do so, you will be successful as an account manager. So with that, is there any final questions we can help to answer?
Yeah, I had a question. Am I audible?
I think
Am
we
I
lost
audible?
you there.
Hello?
Sorry?
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, perfect. So hi, this is Sandeep here, and wonderful presentation. I had a question mainly about on the advertising frontier. So when Snap runs these big campaigns in partnership with other companies, does it hire another agency like the Ogilvy, like the advertising agencies that exist, like the Ogilvy or the TPWA, or does it do from its internal, the internal team handles the aspect?
Yeah, it's a great question. The answer, unfortunately, is it depends. Most of the time, the client has especially our clients, our large clients, have external creative agencies, right? Whether it's some of the ones you mentioned, Ogilvy, TBWA, RGA, you name the acronym, DDB. Like they all work with some of our largest clients. What we have, I'm glad you brought this up, is we have an internal, I'll call it an internal creative agency. We call it creative strategy. And under creative strategy, we have creative strategists that work explicitly with our team. So that team is often brought into the fold, be it through the creative agency or the media agency, to say, this is what we're thinking. What are some best practices for how we can execute this on Snap? In other cases, a client, if we're working very closely with them, they'll lean directly on our creative strategists for an initiative on Snapchat. It literally comes down to the client, the agency, or the time frame that they're looking at. If they're looking to get something done very quickly, oftentimes our creative strategists will just pick up the ball and run with it. If it's something that they're planning for 6 months or 9 months out, the creative agency, their traditional creative agency, is always involved. And I'll like Rich and Jack, I don't know if where Monster fell in the spectrum here, but I'll let you guys share that one.
Yeah, this campaign really was a blend of everything. So as mentioned, we kind of came to the table with some proactive ideas early out. In doing so, we worked very closely with our creative strategy team to kind of pull together some proactive thought starters on how we think this could come to life. And then from there, Halo, so the Microsoft team, they had their own creative agency that was heavily involved, had to approve anything that was tied to the Halo IP. And then for all of the video assets, Monster worked with a separate creative agency who was developing those. So can be a little bit complex and can certainly vary from campaign to campaign. But broadly speaking, I would say that most larger advertisers do have a creative agency, certainly leading the way on most of the video. And then Snap oftentimes leads a lot on the AR aspect.
So if I'm getting it correct, so for every different aspect, a different agency was involved, right? Like, for example, for the video, there was another one, and for et cetera, there were other agencies involved, right? Like, for example, for the Halos, the Microsoft was involved, if I'm not wrong.
Correct. Yes, there were all parties were involved at the different phases in terms of the actual creation. So Snap created the lens, and then a separate creative agency developed the video. Microsoft's agency was more involved for approvals and creative direction.
All right, understood. And how big is the strategy team in a tech company?
The creative team that I referenced?
Yes.
We're relatively small. I think on a global level, it's probably under 50 people. Most of those team members either worked for a brand in some sort of creative capacity, or came from a creative agency. But it's relatively small on a global level. It's probably I couldn't imagine it being more than 50 people at this point in time.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I have a question as well. So it seems like there's a lot of different people and like teams involved in like making a project like this happen. So like for Jack, like as an account manager, how do you like go about like communication with like so many people and teams?
Yeah, great question. In actuality, it's kind of one of those things that it's a case by case basis. Like I said, I tend to err on the side of including more people than should be on an email, or ensuring that messages are making their way to the proper person or stakeholder. It's kind of something that you learn, to be honest. I think at the beginning, when I started as an account manager, I quickly realized that it's in my best interest to send that extra email or to make that extra phone call. So really, it's just a matter of attempting to include as many people as possible and get that point across. I know it's sort of a hard question to answer off the bat, but does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
There was a question in the chat. What other responsibilities does your creative strategy team have? I think the outside of just kind of helping with execution of things like lenses, but the build out of lenses, they're also a resource for us when we have big initiatives. So whether it's sometimes a brand will come to us and say, we're a great example is within the telco space. We know that the next iPhone's coming. It's coming in September. I bet one of my kidneys on that one. So what our creative strategy team will do is they will work to come up with like ideas or concepts or campaigns that the telcos could potentially execute on Snapchat. Now, most of the time, like they have their own initiatives. They're thinking about how they can bring something to life on not only Snapchat but just the media landscape in general. But oftentimes they'll say, you know what, we like the framework that you're putting together for us, or NFL is a good example because that one just rolled out for the team. Here's how we're going, like here's what Snapchat's going to bring to the market with respect to NFL related content, or how we're using some of our creators in our within our environment, how we can bring that to life for a brand like Anheuser-Busch or Verizon. So they proactively build out campaigns as well as kind of help shepherd existing campaigns or ideas through our channels.
Yeah, hi. I had a question. Thank you for joining us. Knowing that you guys work with like a lot of distinguished brands, how do you balance each company's needs while also looking out for the well-being of Snapchat?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think we're very careful. From a Snap culture standpoint, we want to make sure that what we're doing from an advertising standpoint is something that our user base wants to see. And thankfully, like the way that Ads Manager works is it's an auction-based environment, and there are a number of factors that get thrown into the algorithm about serving things. But if you as a user are not interested in seeing something, let's keep it simple and just say, like, I'm not in the market for a car right now, our ads manager will to some degree know that you're not in the market for an ad for a car, so you'll be shown less automobile ads. If you fit within a specific demographic or cohort, and we know that you may have an affinity towards let's say a particular beverage or a particular technology brand or entertainment company, like we will show you those ads. So it's a nice way to kind of keep the platform relatively safe's the wrong term, but relatively relevant for the people that are using it. And we we're very different than, let's say, a Twitter or a Facebook in the sense where, we are a closed platform. If Spencer, if you wanted to publish something that was, or say something on Snapchat that was a little out of left field and a little far-fetched, the only people that would really see that would be your close friends. There's not the virality element to it. So, the way that you speak, the people you speak to, it's very, it's very specific to you and your closed network versus other networks where things can go viral. From an ad standpoint, we try to follow that same mantra. And, there are times where we turn away advertisers because they're doing something or their ad violates a policy that we may have. And I'm going through that right now at the broader CPG level, where, a lot of brands, big brands, Nestle, Anheuser-Busch, Molson Coors are leaning into kind of the CBD trend that's happening. And we have a policy against that. So we're working with legal, we're working with policy to see where flexibility can be. So oftentimes it comes down to like just the fact that we are a very like hands-on company, and we try to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think we have time for maybe one more question, if anybody else has anything.
Any other questions?
I actually kind of have maybe like an advice question.
Sure.
So I recently just started working with companies and clients that are mostly D2C, D2C. And I just wanted to know if there was like advice that you guys had to how to like work with those clients and make them happy, but also keep growing the company at the same time.
Yeah. Sorry to hog the mic, Rich and Jack, but this was a conversation I had recently. Like DTC brands are interesting to me. The reality is like they are purely funded by their marketing budgets, right? Like and every dollar, whether it's like a traditional DTC like Dollar Shave Club or Smile Direct Club, like the money that goes into marketing drives, like there's a direct correlation back to sales for the most part. And yes, it'll always be optimizing. Exactly, Jack. If the campaign is not working, if the dollar that they're putting into the machine, whether it's our ads manager or other platforms, ads managers, if that dollar is not turning into a positive ROAS or return on ad spend for them, be it, for every dollar you put in, you get $2 out, or every dollar you put in, you get $5 out. The minute that starts declining or hitting a point of diminishing return, they're going to stop spending with you. So to Jack's point, like optimization is like the golden rule when it comes to not only any like direct to consumer brand, but any direct response brand. That's what they look for. So marketing becomes like the lifeblood of any DTC brand, because it's very rare that they'll just have money to throw around into, let's say, a Super Bowl ad or something that doesn't have like a direct correlation back to their bottom line.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hope that helps. Yeah. And I too have to go to a meeting, but Alexa I think Alexa had the highest score here. I'm going to put you on the spot just to make sure you have the highest snap score. Can you show us your snap score on the screen, and then I'll work with the ad club to make sure we get you a nice little prize.
Yes, here you go. Oh,
back it up a little bit. Wow, I saw the 937. You got it. All right. We'll make sure a nice little care package comes your way. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me. I can be found on LinkedIn or at Snapchat, and happy to answer anybody's questions along the way. And good luck to y'all.
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much, Brett.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Jack, thank you, Rick. We appreciate all of this. We will be sending you all this PowerPoint and recording, and we'll also send you over Brett's information. Okay. Have a good evening, everyone, and day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.